Move. Come on. Welcome to Kidmissing TV. This is the case of Mark Wilson. Mark was 13 years old when he disappeared on the 4th of November, 1967 from Quincy, California. He was 5'2" and 110 pounds. He was wearing dark pants, a dark sweatshirt, a white jacket, and sneakers. He was Caucasian or white, dark blonde to brown hair, blue eyes. Mark had a slight dimple on one of his earlobes. His nickname is Wilson, and he wore a dental retainer at the time of his disappearance. He left his home in Meadow Valley, California, walking after telling his parents he was going to hitchhike to Quincy to see a movie. He never returned and has never been heard from since. Understand, in 1967, if you told your parents you were going to hitchhike, who cares? Today, your parents would go crazy, but not back then. His parents were Larry and Glory Wilson, but they asked their full names not be printed. I find that a little bit odd. Oh, that's not the family. I'm sorry. Larry and Glory have been dealing with the possibility that a boy who went missing in 1967 had ended up at the bottom of an old well on their Meadow Valley property. Remember, he lived in Meadow Valley. Steve Wharton and his intern, Sinai Yu, of the California State University at Sacramento, reviewed historical data from Sheriff Greg Hagwood on the case in 2016. Sheriff Hagwood also, the information was also shared with another intern, Caitlin Harris. Because they were trying to collect DNA evidence. The university was. So a professor and two interns were attempting to do that. There was no communication with the people who the well is on their property. One day, 3 people, a man, his wife, and a retired police sergeant with a cadaver dog, wandered up the driveway and said, quote, "We just looked," oh no, and the couple said, quote, "We just looked up and they were coming down the driveway with a dog. They introduced themselves and asked if the dog could check around the property." The 3-legged dog Buster was a famous world traveler who had experience in locating remains from as far back as the Civil War. The expert cadaver dog had lost a limb to cancer. They toured the dog all around the Meadow Valley property, and when they got close to the old well, Buster sounded off. What instigated the resurgence of interest was that the mother of the woman of the visiting trio had lived in the area around the time Mark went missing. The woman's mother was dying, and she was sure the mark was in the well. Because the dog hit, they called the, how's it pronounced? Plymouth County Sheriff's Office. Then an investigator with the district attorney's office came out a few weeks later to talk with the homeowners. He actually called them first. The homeowners said, quote, "He told us he was going to try to get some dogs to come out. Said Larry, who learned that 3 dogs were needed to check. With 2 dogs positively identifying the site, it was hard to find available cadaver dogs. And he said, quote, "One was going to come, but he died of cancer." The dog. The dogs must come separately, with a few months between, so they don't trigger each other. When it came out, it hit, said Larry, agreeing with Buster. By that time, the homeowners had torn out the floor covering over the well to improve dog access. Then the 3rd dog came, and it hit too. It was at that point it seemed the sheriff got more involved, and the homeowner said, quote, the FBI came up as the evidence recovery team on February 25th, 2014. He continued, there wasn't much they could do because there was debris in the well and they didn't bring all their tools with them, probes, etc. On March 5th, Sheriff Hagwood brought an environmental/mining engineer out to the site. The homeowner said they were talking about getting in a crane to lift the existing well house building off of the slab to improve access. Then, on March 6th, it was suggested to move the well house 100 yards to a temporary location. Wow. Here's another quote. Greg brought out a contractor who had experience with old buildings who said he could take it, the well house, completely apart, put it back together in the same condition, said Larry. Ugh. And on June 18th at 10:30 in the morning, the sheriff, 2 deputies, 2 FBI engineers from Quantico, Virginia, an FBI agent from Reno, and a superintendent from a large industrial firm responsible for drilling San Francisco Bay tunnels, visited their home. Geez, these people were inundated. They called it, quote, Larry called it, the homeowner, quote, "It was a real 3-ring circus." Yeah, sounds like it. OSHA got involved. So here's another quote from Larry the homeowner. OSHA got involved also. They determined that an EMT would need to be on hand and there would need to be a helicopter landing area available. He continued, a fire truck would be on site and it would all cost $400,000. The county sheriff alone would be $90,000. And he believed a cost like that would be too big a burden for a small county like Plymouth. The organ player from the homeowner's church comes along with an article from the AP, the Associated Press, from a Columbia, Missouri newspaper with pictures of their home and well. Apparently, an AP photographer had come to their home without their knowing and took pictures. And it wasn't that Larry didn't want the child found if he was in the well. In fact, he said, so for several months, 3 of us pulled stuff out of the well, working 2 to 3 times a week for 2 to 3 hours at a time. They bagged the dirt and whatever else that they pulled up and took it to the sheriff's office, including an old battery from 1930. As they got further down, they hit the water table. And he said, quote, there wasn't any piece of equipment we could beg, borrow, or steal to keep up with the water coming in. So they stopped. It was October. It was getting cold. Not much happened after that. Not much until February. And at that point, Wharton procured funding and staff to do a DNA test of the well. The test results came back inconclusive. No testable DNA. Mark had a small amount of cash with him at the time of his disappearance. His mother wouldn't give him cash out of his savings account. I understand kids hitchhiked back then, but why wouldn't you just take your kid back and forth to the theater? They really want to know if he's in that well. It's just been a struggle for the family that lives on the property. They want to help. They want a conclusion. You know? It's not as though they're saying, don't look for the boy. They've done everything they possibly can. And of course, OSHA has to be a big old PIA, which, according to my father, they were. OSHA, if you don't know, is the occupational safety. What that has to do with a forensic dig of a well, I do not know. Stands for Occupational Safety. Oh my God. Something association, I believe. And they were, like I said, a royal PIA for my father, along with the EPA. And my father was a very big environmentalist, but they could be a bit of a pain, but more OSHA than the EPA. Because the EPA were easier to deal with. OSHA was a pain. So this scenario would not surprise my father. I remember him come and say, OSHA's coming tomorrow, lucky me. Part of it was that My father was actually the warehouse supervisor, so he had to answer to them, which was lovely. I'm going to give you the phone number, then I'm going to change your battery. If you have any information, please call the Plumas County Sheriff's Office at 530-283-6300. That's 530-283-6300. Thank you so much for joining me. God bless you. I will see you next time. And remember, every missing person is someone's kid missing. Bye, guys.